It has become a way of daily life here as we cover news around the world. When ISIS comes to terms, it is always with video, audio, social media. They attack the world by saying that here's where we're going to go, here's who we will attack, and here are the people that we will bring to the attack. Social media around the world is driving ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and so many other terrorist groups. The United States and other groups and other governments continue to believe that they can fight against it, and they continue to say that they are going to come up with a plan. Where's the plan? People are working, not just in the government, to see if they can figure out how to stop this rise of these terrorist groups by using such simple methods as social media. Welcome to MidPoint. The Associate Dean at the Simon Wiesenthal Center, a leading Jewish human rights organization, Rabbi Abraham Cooper, joins us today. Rabbi, thank you so much for being here.
Hello, Ed. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you very much for asking. It is something that is vexing every government around the world because you have ISIS, Al-Qaeda, the PLO, Boko Haram, so many others. They use social media to get people to do their bidding. And quite frankly, every religion and every organization and every government has to now be concerned about it. What are we not getting right, Rabbi? Because it would seem that one way or another, we have got to get to these kids, to these young adults, and we've got to tell them that this is not the way. This is not the answer if you are feeling shunned, if you will, in your own communities.
Well, Ed, that is the critical question. I've been meeting with officials in world capitals around the world. It's the same challenge right across from Tokyo to Toronto. The White House summit last week, there was a lot of talk about, maybe coming up with 1 million tweets and positive messaging and that kind of proactive intervention online, which I think is a good thing, something we would endorse. But I also think that a key element was missed, and that is that as we speak, and in your introduction you emphasized it, these groups led by ISIS have been able to develop and execute brilliant marketing plans based on social media that help attract teenage girls from London to get on a plane and join ISIS, that encourage lone wolf attacks across Europe, that radicalize young people. One of the key elements that the Wiesenthal Center's Digital Terrorism and Hate Projects focuses on is in energizing the social media giants themselves to help get into the fray and to degrade the capabilities that we've handed on a platinum platter to the evildoers.
But what about those, Rabbi, and I have to interrupt here because you and I know full well that you're going to get the Googles, the Yahoos, the Twitters, the Facebooks of the world will say, we can't stop certain things because we are basically then in the censorship business. How do you then get them to realize this is not about censorship, this is about saving lives?
I would say there are two ways to respond to that issue because this is not a hate speech issue. This is about stopping, interrupting, and hopefully crippling the food chain of terrorism online that's creating havoc and existential threats around the globe. And I think that's a lesson that I hoped all Americans learned on 9/11. There could be a new generation has to relearn it. And we want to make sure that we learn it before we're hit again in a big way. But more to the point, it's not about speech. Every one of us, including when you sign on for Newsmax, you have that little gray button that says, I agree, before you can get the service. And underneath it is this template contract that no one has ever read. But if you read it, it basically says, you're signing on to a service. We have the right to take your service away if you violate the terms of usage. And so, for example, we actually give grades to the social networking giants. Facebook does a pretty good job. They've got teams on 3 continents looking at this issue. They have transparent rules. They give us access to real people. So if we show them the problem, they not only will usually remove it, but figure out a way how the perpetrators can't get back on again. At the other end of the spectrum, Twitter remains the terrorists' #1 weapon of choice online. An hour after the French were able to kill the 2 assassins of the Charlie Hebdo cartoonists, all over Twitter were hashtags, calling these people heroes, were the two pictures of the perpetrators. And so while millions of people came to the street to protest in Paris, an unprecedented outpouring of outrage against terrorism, the people who we most want to make sure aren't infected were getting the online message from ISIS and that these are two people. Hold up.
Okay, Rabbi, hold on 1 second here because I'm up against the clock. We're going to take a break, come back. I want to continue this and ask some hard questions about these social media groups when MidPoint continues. Let's welcome back Rabbi Abraham Cooper, the Associate Dean at the Simon Wiesenthal Center. Rabbi, we talked about a couple of these social media outlets here a few moments ago, and you mentioned Twitter. Twitter and YouTube seem to be the two, and we're not trying to launch an assault here against them or basically hammer away at them, but it is true. This is where a lot of the terror campaigns show up, a lot of the terror videos show up. Do we need to, and is it possible to go to these groups and say, look, you are the ones who need to be socially responsible now. You are the ones that need to watch these videos, to watch these tweets, and if there's something in here that we think could possibly be dangerous to someone, then I'm sorry, but you've got to basically swallow this whole idea of censorship, and you've got to stop it from being put out there.
Okay, so a few points. Number one, I really do not see this issue as censorship. These are for-profit companies. They set their own rules. When you sign on to it, if you violate it, they're going to throw you off. So the censorship speech issue is an important, critical touchstone for American society. If we conflate that with the terrorist threat, the terrorists are going to win. Now, the answer to your question is, I think, is multi-pronged. Number one, the French Minister of Interior, after he was in Washington at the meeting last week, on Friday, met with the giants of the social media in Silicon Valley. I'll be with some of them tomorrow. The Germans have been there. They obviously carry a stick along with their message because they could make life pretty miserable for an important for-profit company. We're not going to these companies with threats. We don't threaten boycotts. We're basically saying, you set the rules. We'll do some of the heavy lifting. We'll get the public through our apps and other ways, to get us the information. But you have to take this issue seriously and directly. Facebook does. YouTube has the right rules, but unfortunately very often are way too wobbly. There's way too much terrorism-related how-to material on YouTube. And as far as Twitter, they just don't take it that seriously. They will now remove stuff we send them. But the bad guys, the evildoers, know that and have backup, Twitter accounts ready to go. They have to look at this in a very smart and creative way. The collective genius that got them the $1.7 billion for their IPO, if they would spend a few hours of their time about this problem, they can go a long way to help us collectively degrade the brilliant online and evil online campaigns of ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Hamas, etc.
Rabbi, is that just it? And I mean, we've got very short time here, but are these people, and you mentioned Twitter, you singled them out specifically, are they at the end of the day simply more concerned about their profit margin and really in many ways could care less what happens around the globe?
It's really hard to say. I think part of it is a concern that you don't want to get into censorship, and a part of it is you want to maximize your market share. But I honestly believe that the people I meet, including many young people up in Silicon Valley, I don't think they're really interested in getting a top market share from the terrorists of the world. It's too dangerous of a world. We're all on this boat together, and we're going to need to find a way to get the Twitters of the world to start, pulling their part of the of responsibility. Right now, they're not doing enough. And the other companies like Facebook have shown them there's a lot more they can do that won't abrogate speech, but will make us each a little bit safer.
I guess at the end of the day, they have to realize Twitter and all these others, they're not a news service. All they are is basically, in many ways, a casual discussion service that has been perverted by certain groups.
Right, but there's nothing casual about the business end of Silicon Valley. We're talking about mega companies in some ways that are more powerful than governments. And they can't use the excuse that, look, we're just like the telephone company or a casual service. This is really the cutting edge of marketing and communication, including command and control. around the world. We need them to pay some serious attention to this issue and help us degrade the evildoers.
And we have to do that as well. We're all out of time. Rabbi Abraham Cooper, fascinating discussion. Please, let's stay in touch. Let's talk again real soon. I'm curious as to what happens when you meet with these folks again. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Appreciate it.
A pleasure. There's indeed a radical change now. American Muslims are putting their best foot forward in Los Angeles, where she is making serious waves in changing hearts and minds. Spanning the Globe is next.